Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Blitz Growth. Super excited to have Chris out here today. There's going to be some amazing stuff that we cover here, so don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment or a review if you're loving Blitz Growth. But to introduce our amazing guest, Chris is a keynote speaker and author. Got some amazing growth hacking and marketing content to share. So there's a little bit of branding. He's worked with amazing companies like ING, Cisco, KPMG, HelloPrint, and he's going to go over these 7 growth levers that he covers in his book and how he's been using these with companies and consulting and growing these brands in amazing ways. So we're going to dive in, find what that 1% growth lever is to 2x your business. So tune in and take some notes because a lot of this will be applicable to your businesses, and really excited to have Chris here. So thanks for joining, Chris.
Thanks, Jack. Really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. So, Chris, give us a little elevator pitch. How do you describe what you do and how you help people? What's the real value add pitch that you give people when you first meet them?
Sure. Well, I believe that there is in every business a hidden gold mine of growth that's in front of you. But I know that a lot of companies don't see it. And if they see it, they don't know how to extract the gold. And I think that to say it modestly, that's one of my superpowers. And that's what I really love to do every day.
Nice. And I know growth hacking is so vague, and marketing is a gray area of where it starts and begins. But what sort of work have you done in the past that kind of led you to teaching companies how to put together these growth tactics, how to grow, and then how do you kind of differentiate growth hacking or growth marketing to just like marketing? How do you kind of like sell that more extreme and exciting version of marketing?
Yeah, sure. Well, it was a long journey with a lot of scar tissue, as I can tell you. Started out as an auditor at KPMG, hated my job so much that I decided to quit after 1 year. Started my first startup, completely failed within 1 year. So those were 2 very successful years. Lost a lot of money, but then I've always learned that if you want to be successful, you need to figure out who has already done it and what you can learn from them. And that was the time that growth hacking was really getting traction in the US. And I'm based in the Netherlands. And at that moment, I thought, okay, they did something very smart over there. Can I learn from that? So I decided to completely immerse myself in the field and started a growth agency with 2 business partners. They already owned a digital agency, so that was really helpful. Because of that, we had access to a lot of different companies. And so I could test all the things I learned online through courses, through books, in a lot of different contexts. So I can definitely say that I've tried a lot of things, especially in the early years. Not many things worked. So I've also learned
Mhm.
what you shouldn't do, but also what are the pitfalls and how you can circumvent those, and what are the things that actually make an impact. And what I'm also trained in is, because companies hire you to make an impact, and we were working on retainer, which means that if we weren't helping them to grow, they wouldn't pay us anymore. So in that sense, like, I've really learned to spot where growth is, because I knew that if they would grow, I would get paid. And when you only get paid when you kill, well, then you learn really fast, as my mentor Jay Abraham would say.
Nice. That's really cool. And so you started that agency with 2 co-founders. And what were you mainly doing for the growth of that? And then what worked the best when you started working with brands and you came in, you ordered their company, you looked at growth areas? What were the common growth areas you guys would specialize in? And what kind of growth tactics do you think worked the best in growing those companies? And also maybe what was the niche of the companies?
Yeah, so I think it was a pretty broad spectrum of clients that we helped. So that was really interesting. The thing was, like, my 2 co-founders owned that digital agency. So in a lot of cases, the context where we would come in is that clients would approach us and tell us, like, hey, we need a new website. And instead of just creating a website site, we asked the question, okay, but why do you want it? Like, what are your ambitions? What are your goals? And out of that, you come to some kind of analysis on, like, where are the opportunities? And to be honest, in a lot of cases, the low hanging fruit is really easy. Just basic solid zero stuff, really nailing the value proposition, really understanding what type of customers you want to target. And this is also something that I now see in a lot of my consulting engagements that I do right now, because last year I sold my agency. And what I see with a lot of clients that ask me, like, where should we grow? I always ask them, they're asking level 12 questions while they haven't mastered level 5 yet. So I see that in a lot of companies, there's a lot of growth possible, but just starting with the basics and do them really, really well. But at the other end, like these basic things of following up, making sure the infrastructure is right, that's boring. It's not sexy. And that's
Mhm.
always the challenge with growth hacking. People really think it's the shiny objects, the tools, the cool stuff. But if you really want to make an impact, you can't do the cool and shiny stuff if the basics aren't there yet.
Yep. I 100% agree. Okay. And so what sort of things would you recommend for brands kind of just getting started and looking at this growth trajectory? We've got understanding the customer, maybe doing some avatars, that sort of thing. What else did you usually, implement or suggest to brands who were looking to, master level 12 before level 1?
I would say that a very underrated area is also positioning. So the
Mhm.
question is, if you serve a certain niche or you solve a certain problem for them, they also have like 10 other options on what they can do to get that problem solved. So the question is like, how are you different? What makes you unique? So a lot of people in growth hacking talk about like cool tactics, but I've seen that if you also take the positioning into consideration, that really makes a very big impact. And I'm a very big fan of the concepts from the book, The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, which basically states is you need to be the first in mind within a category. And this is where people need to pay very good attention to, because if the category is already filled with different companies, that means it's really hard and really expensive to get also into that category. So what you do at that point, you create a new category. And if you're really smart and strategic about that, by when you're launching a new company, you're also creating a new category, like that will fast track you in your growth trajectory.
Yeah. And so obviously niching down is super important in this case. Um, Are there any tips on how someone can niche down? So, like, how should they think about niching down? So, I know people always look at the size of the market and like, yeah, I just want 1% of that $100 billion market, and it's going to be great. But what do you think founders should actually do to discover where they should niche down?
I think it's a broad question. So let me see how I can answer that in the best way possible. So when I start out with companies and when I launch new things myself, the first thing that I'm looking at is like, who are the crazy ones that are actually throwing money at me at first. So in other words, who is crazy enough to just like, okay, give it a shot and see where it happens. Start from there. Start from there. Who are those people? How are they describing what you're doing? And I believe that there's a lot of gold in how your first customers are describing what you're doing, because we can sit in a room, have countless workshops, discuss what we could do, how we would position ourselves, but it's positioning in the eyes of the market. And if you don't listen to the market, it's impossible to find the exact positioning. So that's where I would start. Like, who are the first crazy ones to buy from you? Start from like, what's the pain that we want to solve? What's the result, the outcome that the clients want to achieve? How do they perceive the mechanism that we bring in? And how are they describing it? And out of that, I would choose the positioning for the first period, because like you will also evolve over time.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that people don't understand is they need to start in a smaller niche, and then as they get more and more success, they expand the size of the niche that they're in, or they jump onto a complementary niche that they can also service.
Yeah,
So those are really good points. And so, how do you suggest brand owners get this information? Like talking to like every business owner should do it. They should talk to their customers and all that sort of stuff, but very few actually do it. Are there any kind of tactics that you've used over the years? Because obviously, collecting data is super important in what you do with companies. Is there any ideas or examples or tactics you've used to collect information, talk to customers? What's the best way that brands can do that?
So I think the key thing is also to understand why don't they talk to their customers? What are they afraid of? And what I've seen with growth is that real accelerated growth is at the opposite side of discomfort. And you see that with people not following up, not getting out there. So you really need to be aware, okay, where's my discomfort? Do I have an imposter syndrome or something like that? Because if you know that if you can go to the other side of that, that's where real growth is. And that's where you will see that you will be passionate about talking to people. And I think that another framework that Jay Abraham uses, which I'm a very big fan of, is like you shouldn't be falling in love with your product, but you should fall in love with your customer. So you should really think to yourself, if you don't go out there to talk to your customers, like I know a lot of different type of clients that I would never work with because they don't spark my energy. But I know that I'm very energized by people who come to me and say, you know what, Chris, we tried all these things. We know we're stuck. We need help. Like people who are in that state of mind, who already have something established or who are really ambitious, but know that they need somebody to accelerate them. Like that's my market. Those people I love working with. But also at the other side, there are a lot of clients or prospects that I don't work with because I'm very, very strict. If after a meeting I don't have more energy than before the meeting, like I'm not going to work with you. So in that sense, it's also important that you know where to focus on.
Would you have any tips on what founders and business owners in the early stages, so maybe first year, maybe making less than $50,000 or euro a year, any things that they should avoid when getting started with their business?
Oh, definitely. It's like I'm a very big fan of pre-selling. And what do I mean with that? Is you need to sell it before you've created it. And I've made the mistake myself to be like creating something for a full year, spending hundreds and hundreds of K of costs to create something that nobody wanted. So I now flipped it around completely. First, we tried to sell it. And once we've sold it, we're like, oh, okay, how are we going to deliver this? But that's actually a good problem because you can buy yourself out of that. And for example, I had a client and they thought, okay, we want to do coaching for high potential, like new people in corporates. So like the trainee layer. And they were like, oh, should we create like a business model canvas? And should we do this? And should we do that? I was like, no, like this problem is there. You've got these people in your network. Call them, send them a message, and that you will give them 4 hours of coaching for €100. And they were like, what are we gonna do? Doesn't matter. Send that message. Within 31 minutes, they had their first client. If I wouldn't push them into that direction, for 6 months, they probably wouldn't have had any revenue. But because they started selling, once you've sold something, you also need to deliver it. So start with selling, then you're building it, and out of that, you can iterate to a profitable model.
Got it. And then what's some tactics or ways to sell something before you create it? Like how would someone go about doing that, whether it's an e-commerce store or consulting business or whatever type of business it would be? What's the path of least resistance for selling something before creating it?
So the thing you should create is the written sales material. And what do I mean with that? Is that if you had a conversation with somebody, you try to write a sales page. So what I do for that is like I use a Google Doc. I write down like, hey, this is your pain. You told me this. And this would be the way on how I would solve it. Then I ask them on a scale from 1 to 10, how likely would you be to buy it right now? And if they tell me a 7, I would ask them, okay, what would make it a 10? Or what is not making it a 10? And by constantly iterating that, you can at some point show people a landing page or a Google Doc. And based on that, they say, you know what, give me that. So that's where I would always start because you go from one-on-one consulting or selling. And the most scalable way of selling is if you can use the internet, if you can use written materials or videos or something like that. But the mistake that a lot of people make is write the sales material, create the videos before they really understand what triggers people and in what form they need to shape it, what the objections are. And that's what you can learn in a one-on-one setting. So that's why I'm always a big fan of pre-selling, to learn those objections, to really get into that game. Out of that, you create your sales material, your written pieces, your videos, and you know if you scale that, that will be very profitable.
Hey guys, we put a bunch of effort into making great content for this YouTube channel, so please hit subscribe, leave us a comment, hit like, and tell a few friends about it.